This is the future.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Warframe video. Before we begin, I would just like to say that this is not an April Fool's video. If you want to get millions and billions of damage right now, then you must try the Arcane. Now, I know this hammer can deal 2 billion damage in the past, but it's not as reliable as other 2 billion nuking setups. It felt like a chore building up your combo counter and slam capacitor, and the damage was inconsistent due to sometimes the hammer relied on the solar eclipse damage buff. It's kind of different now, and in fact, you can deal massive nuke damage on the Arcane without any outside buffs such as the eclipse ability. However, since we will be trying to maximize its damage potential here, let me show you some of the setups that you can use to maximize damage and allow you to deal a constant 2 billion damage to enemies. The build for the Arcane is simple. All you need is to put the usual critical chance and critical damage, elemental mods, and then damage mods. You could go with condition overload on this setup, but it would require you to afflict enemies with multiple statuses first before you can do a heavy slam attack to get the most damage from the setup. It's a good combo, but I think you won't like it in a real mission because that would be an added step, and what I'm aiming for here is a simple way to get that 2 billion damage for the hammer. Hence, I just added a prime pressure point and added other things in the synergy so it can reach millions and billions of damage. By the way, if you don't have any setup that can group enemies such as the Nautilus Cordon Precept or any subsume abilities that can group, then I highly advise that you use the primed reach mod so that you can hit more enemies in one single swing. Just replace primed fever strike on the build. However, primed reach doesn't increase the radial attack spread of the hammer. Also, Discipline's Merit is a good choice for the Arcane as it lets you activate the Tennokai mechanic after hitting 4 enemies. This is superb for the synergy as you now have the option to not consume your 12 times combo counter after doing a heavy slam attack with the hammer. Also, let's talk about the slam damage changes in the Dante Unbound update. Digital Extremes just buffed the radial damage of slam attacks, as right now, all the mods you equipped in the Arcane can increase the damage of both direct hit and radial slam. In the past, the Seismic Wave was the only mod that increased the radial damage of the slam, but now, this mod will further increase your radial damage to the point that you can reach millions of damage, and not that measly damage that we saw before Dante Unbound update. In terms of arcane choices, you can go with the 3 primary melee arcanes. You can add melee exposure for the extra corrosive element, boosting the overall damage of your heavy attack slam, or you can also go with melee animosity, which grants an insane 420% critical chance bonus to your next heavy attack. However, you only get this much critical chance by stacking the bonus percentage through hitting enemies with your normal attacks. Just like the slam capacitor, all the critical chance you gain will be consumed once you do a heavy attack slam. Or you can use the melee influence arcane that spreads the status you inflict once you have activated the buff. The good thing about the melee influence is that you don't have to mod for electricity since each slam of the Arcane can proc electric. If you have the slam capacitor, it will guarantee that the slam attack will have 100% electric proc. This is probably the best in slot arcane for this melee as it gives more nuking prowess to the weapon, but as I have said earlier, it depends on your preference. Now, I did say earlier that the Arcane can be used as a nuking weapon without any outside buffs. In the build, you can already nuke steel path enemies if you can somehow build up the slam capacitor of the weapon. You see, the passive of the weapon is crucial for the nuking part. If you are a new player wondering how this passive works, then let me explain it for a bit. So every kill with the weapon grants the slam capacitor buff, increasing the damage of the next slam attack by 100%, and this stacks multiplicatively with itself up to 10 times. The buff lasts for about 20 seconds, and when used, it will also release a large electric discharge, but increasing its range by 1 meter per charge and applying a guaranteed electricity proc. The multiplicative behavior of the buff is what makes the damage so insane that after mods, the overall damage of your Arcane's heavy slam with the capacitor buff can reach millions and even damage cap numbers in the game. As I have said, you don't need outside sources right now, but there are instances wherein you will need some buffs for the weapon, especially when building a stack for the slam capacitor. In a real mission, you will face weak foes that don't have good defenses. You can use them to build up your slam capacitor easily. There are cases also that these foes get buffed by Xmas units with damage reduction buffs. Say for example, if you are doing the new Omnia Fissure and Steel Path Conjunction Survival, then expect the ancient units will always be present to buff these enemies, and sometimes the mission becomes hectic, especially if you are running it solo. What you would want is to kill the ancient unit first, but sometimes you get fucked as there will be another ancient unit lurking near, giving the damage reduction buff to the enemies. I could stop with the Arcane build, but I don't want you to go back in this video and say that the weapon doesn't work in real missions. That is why I want to give you all the details you need on what you can expect while playing this build. In line with this, the Arcane is usable by any Warframes right now, but there are those exceptional combos that make the nuking part of the melee more reliable in real missions. After Digital Extremes announced that they'll be allowing all mods to affect the slam damage, I already decided to make an updated video for the Arcane. The initial combo I was using was with an Eclipse Loki. This is my foolproof setup for an Arcane nuke combo in the past, since Loki can go invisible for a long period and be safe from enemy attacks. All I needed to do was to build the slam capacitor, and the Eclipse buff does help in increasing the damage of the normal hits of the hammer. Also, invisibility does help maintain the solar eclipse buff, as once you have the buff, then you use invisibility and the solar eclipse will stay even if you walk in dark corners of the tile set. But now it's different, as you can just either tap to get the lunar eclipse damage reduction or hold the ability key to get the solar eclipse damage damage buff. While this is a good change, I can't believe that Digital Extremes were literally serious in decreasing the damage buff of Eclipse to the point that it can be on the same level as Rhino's subsumed version of Roar. My initial thought was they will just lower the numbers, but we can still get at least 200% buff if we have tons of power strength in our build. I did not expect that the developer would lower the damage buff to the point wherein we don't even get a confident 100% buff with a 300 power strength setup. All I can say is that Digital Extremes murdered the subsumed version of the Eclipse after this update, and for the Arctitron build, the damage buff of the Eclipse is not the important right now. In the past, we can see a huge jump from 200 million damage to 600 million with the Eclipse buff. But right now, Eclipse is like a buff wherein you squeeze more juice so you can reach that 2 billion damage cap for this Arctitron nuke setup. That is why I ended up just playing Hildryn with the defense strip setup. The idea was to strip the armor and group enemies with the Nautilus Cordon Precept so I could easily kill them with my normal hits and build up the Slam Capacitor buff. By the way, Gloom is not necessary on this build, so you can just subsume something like Eclipse to the Warframe and boost the overall damage of the synergy. I would not advise Gloom when using the grouping mechanic of the Cordon Mod Precept, as enemies will be 95% slower while affected by the ability. This will result in a very slow pulling from the Cordon Mod, which makes the whole point of grouping and killing enemies fast and effective. The combo was good because with Pillage, I can strip all the defenses of enemies, hence my Arctitron enough juice so it can kill all enemies with its normal hits to build up the Slam Capacitor. The only problem with this is my combo count. It would take a couple of strikes before I could build my combo count. And in the Arctitron build, I was using primed reach just so I could hit multiple enemies that are grouped by the Nautilus Sentinel. This is where Kullervo with his new augment comes in. The combo doesn't have the same defense strip as Hildryn, but it can still reach those insane numbers with red crit, and the Eclipse buff I subsumed in my Kullervo, replacing his collective curse ability in the process. Some of you might wonder why I did this, but his third ability will be useless for this combo. While the damage redirection is superb, but we won't be needing it as we will be dealing millions and billions of damage with this combo. What we need is his first ability for that red crit buff, his second ability for survivability, and his third ability for combo count generation. The new augment of Kullervo, Wrath of Yuko, is a godsend mod for Kullervo, especially for those combos that are reliant on combo count to have red crit and increased damage. For those asking, the Exodia Contagion combo works great for this, as not only does it allow you to relocate the Storm of Yuko, but it also resets its duration every time you do use your Wrathful Advance skill. Basically, you only need to cast your fourth ability once, and then just focus on casting Wrathful Advance as often as possible. In this synergy, you can freely just teleport or hit enemies with your Wrathful Advance heavy attack, as combo depletion won't be an issue. Each time you teleport to a location using your first ability, the Storm of Yuko will be dragged to that area and it will refresh its duration, continually hitting enemies and giving you combo count in the process. With the Nautilus Cordon Mod Precept that group enemies, the synergy becomes more potent as you can kill enemies easily with normal attacks of the Arctitron, but with huge red crit numbers. In fact, one hit against those enemies with low defense values can go up to 10 million or more damage. And if you are going to take this beyond Steel Path levels, then all you need to do is add the Uneru Focus for defense stripping, and then constantly use the heavy attack of Wrathful Advance to kill enemies and build up the Slam Capacitor. After that, nuke enemies to your heart's content and just simply repeat the process. Now, in the clip I am showing you have both stretch and overextended in the build. The Kullervo build I have shown earlier was the final build because overextended is unnecessary in my opinion. With stretch and overextended, your fourth ability will gain 23 meters of radius, but with the new augment, I find it not needed for the Arctitron synergy since you can group enemies with the Cordon Mod Precept. In addition, Kullervo's ultimate has infinite duration with the augment and allows you to relocate to a location wherein there are lots of enemies present. Another good thing about not adding overextended is that we further increase the damage buff of your Eclipse ability as well as the red crit of the Wrathful Advance skill. And finally, let's discuss further improvements that I want to add to this build in the future. The obvious choice is probably equipping Tau forged versions of the Violet Arcane Shard that grants more melee critical damage. My Kullervo can fully benefit from its buff, since I have primed flow in my build that grants more than 500 energy and doubles the critical damage buff provided by the Arcane Shard. Once I have all the Tau forged versions of the Violet Arcane Shard, I will remove Eclipse in my build and subsume Nourish for more energy economy. Sometimes Arcane Energize is not enough for this build, especially if you're like me who likes to spam his abilities more often. However, I'm still having second thoughts about the possible changes since I could also just put Violet Arcane Shard and then get the budget meal equilibrium effect of the shard. After that, I could just take advantage of the synth deconstruct mod for my Nautilus that gives a chance to spawn health orbs once you killed an enemy that was recently damaged by your Sentinel. I think this is a better route as I don't exactly need that much energy economy in the build. As I have said, I just like to spam abilities, so that is why I'm looking for more ways to further improve the energy economy of the synergy. So that's all about it. I think I have given all the information you need for this synergy, but if you have further questions, then feel free to ask it in the comment section below. Before trying this combo, please leave a like and subscribe to help us grow our channel and please the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Squad Leader, signing off.
This is the future. revolution.